Most people assume if something feels off in their body, you stretch it, strengthen it, rest, and eventually it'll work itself out. But a lot of the time, what's actually happening underneath is often getting missed. How the body is compensating, what's actually doing the work, what's actually overloaded over time, and how people end up reinforcing the same issue they're trying to fix. I'm Summer, Integrative Wellness Consultant and Doctor of Physical Therapy, and I'm joined today by Dr. Brandon Rosa, fellow PT and functional fitness coach based out of Tampa, Florida. Before we get into everything, I want to give some context on you and your background. So what made you interested in or choose PT in the first place?
PT, it's such an interesting thing nowadays, right? It's people's favorite topic, but really what got me into PT was a lifetime of wanting to figure out how everything worked better, right? I've always been super interested in the best at what they do. And everyone talks about the training and recovery and nutrition they did. And you always hear about training and nutrition, but the recovery I felt was so skipped. And so I took a dive into that, and I wanted to learn everything I could about how the body works and operates, and it brought me to PT.
Amazing. And so from what I understand, you started off more in the fitness realm of side of things, right?
Yeah. So I started off kind of in the fitness realm, and that was kind of like a personal thing. I was focusing on, just getting stronger and trying to be more fit myself. I grew up with some pretty crazy injuries, and that required me to have to be fit. And so that was the pathway I knew. And so that was the pathway I started at.
Amazing. Yeah. And fitness is, to a lot of people, it's just a choice, right? It's an extra in their life. But for a lot of us, for different reasons, it's kind of part of the necessary process, right?
Exactly.
And so when you first started working as a PT or solely as a PT, let's say, what did a traditional day look like for you in the clinic?
Ooh, traditional day was long, right? So we get to the clinic, probably 30 minutes early if I'm good. If not, I'm getting there a little closer. But quick chart review, and then, depending on the day, we're seeing like 12 to 18 patients that day. And so people start walking in the door, we get them back, start seeing people, notes are flying around, definitely no time for eating or anything like that. And then, 7:30 rolls around and sun's down, and you're like, all right, time to go home.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I joke about a lot now too, is, being out of that environment. It's like my body clocks have finally regulated because you get so used to running in the break room in between clients just to shove food down your throat,
Yep,
or
just as
running to the
quickly as you
bathroom.
possible can. Yeah.
It's kind of bizarre, but that's the reality of it,
someone's on a
really.
bike, you're like, all right, I got 5 minutes. I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'm going to take a bite of that pizza someone brought in like the last session, and then we're going to go back.
Well, and sometimes I wasn't even hungry yet. It was just, I knew that was going to be my only window for the next however many hours. So you have to take advantage when you can.
Exactly.
It's just not ideal,
No, not ideal.
And then how much time do you feel like you got to actually spend one-on-one with your patients?
That was tough. Very rarely did I get to spend one-on-one time. I walk them in, and I always tried to like really hard to bring people in like staggered, like, 5-10 minutes, so I can at least bring you in as a one person. I hated bringing in multiple people at the time. I'm like, oh, this feels like such a terrible process. But, maybe like 15-20 minutes out of like, your standard hour-long session. That's how much one-on-one time I'm getting with people, or I was.
Yeah. Well, and it makes you start questioning things a little bit too, right? Because you get into the industry to work with and help people, but then you're like, how much time am I even spending with them, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
For me, it was actually, I started right out of grad school, 15 years ago, with a job, luckily, where we did spend more time one-on-one working with people, and we booked, one person every 30 minutes. So each PT had 30 minutes of hands-on time with each person.
Yeah.
But still, after 8 or 9 years of that, I still felt like that wasn't enough. I wasn't
rushing.
I didn't have enough time to assess everything I needed to assess and work on them and talk to them about lifestyle, all of it.
No, yeah, exactly. Like in the perfect world, sure, like we can get some great work done in 30 minutes. But sometimes you come in and you're just having a terrible day. And so we need the first 15 minutes are gone, just trying to bring you back into what we need to focus on.
That exactly. Yeah. Well, and not to mention the stress that people come in off the street with from the commute, from traffic, from finding parking, from taking time out of their workday. So it's that
all that
adds to
hectic.
their
Yeah.
physical muscle tension as well, which then we're
So
trying to
stressed
reset
and
in
yep.
that short
Or
amount of time, right?
exactly. It's
So
tough.
then what made you decide to shift how you practice now?
It was completely based on the fact that I was just tired of people, getting almost better or not having the ability to really get all the way better. And then, PT was kind of up for them. They were either, out of visits, couldn't get any more approval, or, they had to go back to the system where they got to go get imaging, another referral. And sure, there was like cash-based options at the time, where I was at, but I didn't feel like it was right to, charge them a cash base when they're still going to have to come in with 2, 3 other people and really only get that like 15, 20 minutes of
Yeah.
one-on-one time. So I was just like, this is not cool. I want to help people.
Yeah, that's the tough part. And, at the former company I worked with too, we also had a few cash pay options, but realistically, people only use that when their insurance benefits ran out,
Hmm.
but with me making the pivot to cash based years ago, it's um, the results on the client patient side changes too, because I don't know what it is, but it's like suddenly when our own money's on the line, we want to show up. We want
Yep,
to get the most out of it. We want to milk it for as much as it's worth, rather than when we think, oh, it's just free, it's covered by insurance. Like it's
exactly.
on somebody else's dime, right? It's a little less value to us. So
Yeah.
it's
Puts a
interesting.
little, yeah, it makes you have some skin in the game. And you're like, okay, cool. Like I have
Yeah.
something on the line. Like let me check out these exercises. Let me see if they're worth doing. And the next thing you know, like you're just like, oh wow, this is really cool. I didn't know all this stuff
Yeah.
was possible.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing. And then, of course, without getting into anything too personal, but you mentioned you had some injuries and health stuff growing up. But how have your own training or recovery experiences changed how you approach your patients today, or your clients, rather, too?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. It really does have, kind of a larger approach. Growing up with those injuries and everything, I know what it's like to not have help or to not get the help that you thought you were going to get. When you go to a doctor, you go to a therapist, and then you don't get better. They
Hmm.
don't have answers for you that work. You're just like, defeated, and you start to lose trust a little bit. And so I always try to make all my patients and clients feel heard and make sure that I understand where they're coming from. Like I know like things are really difficult,
Hmm.
and we're going to figure that out, and we're going to get through that, and we're going to do whatever you need to get through that. Not really whatever, is available to you, but, whatever you personally need.
How was it for you in those times in terms of, you said it was difficult to find people that could actually help sometimes, but how difficult was it in terms of sourcing the right types of people that could help you with your specific needs
Oh,
versus kind of being just referred to somebody general?
yeah. It's usually where you go is somewhere general. It takes, sometimes it would take years of like begging like primary doctors to send you to a specialist to get a referral, to do this, to get an imaging. And then at the end of the day, like when you yourself don't really know what's wrong with you, it's hard to like advocate for yourself. And especially like, when I was younger and stuff, like I didn't really know what was going on. So it was hard to tell people like, yeah, this is the issue. And then because people need guidance sometimes. And so it's hard to express that to people. So it can be really tough to get that, help that you need.
I agree. And I went through that. I got mold toxicity from a pipe burst, I don't
Dang.
know, 6, 7 years ago now.
Wow.
And honestly, even everybody I worked with, I could tell by my complaints of my symptoms that they were thinking I was being a hypochondriac or, whatever.
Yeah.
Just make,
Yep.
because
Nope.
they
They're
didn't
just,
understand my symptoms. But
no.
similarly,
Yeah.
I went to roughly 7 or 8 different specialists who
Wow.
all same thing, and with working in the medical industry already, I just realized, what are people that don't work in this industry supposed to do in terms of
Supposed to do?
advocating
Oh
for
my gosh.
themselves?
Yeah. It's,
Because for me, it just fortunately pissed me off enough to keep searching and keep
yes.
pushing, right? And just be like, no, you're
No, this
wrong.
is not it.
Sorry.
Yep. Nope.
I
Yeah.
know what I feel in my own body, right? And I
Exactly.
know that I am not right, essentially. So, yeah, it can be a real challenge for people, but that's why we're
Mm,
here, right?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I know exactly what that's like sometimes, like, because I've gone to doctors and I'm like, I'll look at their face. I'm like, oh, you're confused. You don't really know what's going on right now. And I'm like, because I know what it's like to be confused. Because, I'm a, the more and more I learned, like in the medical field, the more I really truly believe in people who specialize in things. Specialists are very important, right? there are a lot of general practitioners that can help guide you in the right area, but, specialists are really important for those, really niche specific needs. And so I think that more people need to, push to go to those things and go to specialists that can really help you and not, just try to brush it off as something that they think they can handle when really they know that it needs to be dived into a little bit deeper.
Yeah, we all have to have a little bit of discernment. There
Yeah,
there can be this blanketed societal stereotype of trust the doctor. They know,
exactly. Yep.
right? But
Yeah,
it's doctors are people too, and it's going through medical processes. It's we all have to start learning somewhere, and everybody starts from square one. So just have some discernment, and
yeah, I
if
think
you feel like you're not getting the right results, you also need to advocate for yourself in terms of speaking up for yourself with your doctor and talking
exactly.
to them about what you're feeling. Because if you don't tell them, they won't know,
They
you
won't know.
know?
Exactly. They won't know.
So help them help you too sometimes, right?
Exactly. They need the guidance a little bit sometimes, if
Yeah.
if people really get, and that's people, they get nervous and they think, oh, maybe that wasn't important or maybe this isn't really affecting it. So they skip a lot of the little details that sometimes can really guide us to the exact thing you need.
hmm Yeah, exactly. And then is there anything outside of your formal PT school training that has shaped how you practice now today, let's say?
I think outside of it, it would really just be, growing up and doing the things I did and playing sports and being in the gym and really just experimenting with myself a lot,
hmm
just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And then learning from as many people as I could. I love to learn from people that are the best at what they do. And so whether that be, in the medical field or in a sport or in a business, they can give you little keys of information that can help guide you to be better at what you want to do.
So then, saying all of that, do you feel like most of your practice and your approach today comes more from your formal training or more from kind of your clinical or life experience?
I think a lot of it comes from a blend of both. That the clinical training gave me the base and the foundation that I needed to question everything. And like, okay, I know how things work and I know how things operate, so I will question everything until I find, something that's going to work. I'm just not going to accept an answer. I'm like, okay, why is this happening? I'm like, if it doesn't make sense, well, we're gonna do research, we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna get you that answer.
Yeah, of course. And then, has anything in your own experience made you more cautious or more specific about how you approach certain cases, maybe more complex ones?
Yes, yes. I've, I think what really makes the difference is, not everyone can be, I know that not everyone has the same treatment approach and not everyone can assume the same treatments and get the same results. But the way that you kind of guide people through the treatments is very different, right? Not everyone can just be told, all right, I know this is going to help you and this is what you need to do. Some people need, workarounds to get to the solution that you're trying to guide them to. And, approaching people personally and trying to figure out how they learn and how they experience things is just really what, helps mold and guide the way that I provide those practices and treatments for people.
Yeah, I mean, even in queuing patients and clients alone, it's like people absorb information in different ways, right? And they require different types of cues. Sometimes they need to actually physically do it in terms of their motor control. Sometimes they need a specific type of verbal. Sometimes they need a tactile cue.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's like you
Sometimes.
have to be ready to be adaptable and kind of, on the fly in those moments, right?
Yes, exactly. Sometimes you can give someone all the encouragement in the world and they're just, not quite getting it. But if you just leave them alone for like 5 minutes, let them try to feel it and figure it out. Next thing you know, they got it just like that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's time to actually tune into your body, actually
Yes, exactly.
pay attention to what is going on, right? And not
Hmm.
just focusing on the reps, right?
Exactly.
And then how often do you feel like people are doing exercises correctly versus just getting through them in general? Let's say
Oh,
not just PT wise, but let's say
yeah.
even just training
You're
clients.
often they're just getting through it. I mean, me
Yeah.
personally, you have to focus and really push yourself to do things correctly and actually challenge yourself, make the exercise a little bit uncomfortable, make it a little bit difficult. Because lots of times we like to just go in and just, all right, I'm going to do this exercise and that. And they just think, okay, cool. Like my 3 sets of 8 are done. I'm stronger now. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you though? Was it hard at all? Like, so lots of times, people are just kind of doing the exercise instead of, actually making an impact on themselves.
Yeah, well, and how do you feel at the end of that 8? Do you feel like
Exactly.
it's a
Yeah.
bit of a struggle, or do you feel like it's a breeze?
Yeah. You're like,
Because,
oh, wow, that was
you know
easy. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it depends, and
Yeah. It's not
I
the magic number. It's just, it's the intensity you put behind it.
exactly. And I actually recommend that people do exercises rather than to a certain rep. I call it to
Hmm.
form failure.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So as soon as their form starts, feeling like a little wonky
Yes.
to hold, that's
Hmm.
when your body's fatigued. So the more you push, the more your body's going to compensate. And you're going to
Exactly.
start working the wrong things, which then we have to backtrack later.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I notice that all the time. And that's one of my favorite things I get to do, like when I'm in person with people, is like we'll be working and I'm like, all right, you know what? Drop the weight right there, like right where you're at, and keep going
Yeah.
now. And like, okay, you know what? Shorten your range. Like
Right.
we're gonna keep challenging you, but like I won't let you break and start compensating. We're gonna keep challenging that muscle, shorter form, lighter weight, and we're gonna push it. But
Mhm.
you're gonna stay exactly where you need to be.
Yeah. And, I feel like if people have difficulty kind of tuning into whatever they are doing, having a trainer or somebody guide them through can really help, right? And then
Yeah.
otherwise, something I do with myself is I purposely will do workouts where I have to focus because I don't
Yes.
know what's coming yet,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's, pick the classes maybe you haven't been to or pick a different workout routine so that you have to be in the moment and actually pay attention to what you're doing.
100%, especially like as learn more and understand workouts more, you start to think like, oh, hold on, I need to like focus in on this or something. Sometimes you just need to be taken out of that and taken out of your mind and your own world and be challenged in a way you're not expecting exactly that way.
It's kind of bizarre too. I've talked to a lot of people about this because I work with a lot of, we'll say, high performers, high achievers,
Hmm.
people who are managing a lot and doing things like this. Let's say going to a yoga class with a different routine, or even getting in the shower, doing things where their hands and their body are occupied otherwise and they have to focus.
Yes,
That's when sometimes your most creative thinking and thought processes can
exactly.
come in too. So it's almost a form of focus meditation, right? You're giving your brain one single task to focus on, and then the rest can kind of come in. So it's almost a mental clearing exercise too, in a way.
100%. Yeah, you start giving yourself, different challenges that you're not used to, and then that lets your brain kind of focus in on gaining new pathways. You're like, oh wow, okay, and now everything starts spinning around. You're like, okay, you start thinking more and getting more creative, and you're just like, wow, all these things become possible again.
Yeah. Well, and the more we have on our minds, the more tense we are typically,
Exactly.
right? So
Yes.
we have to get it out somehow.
We gotta get it relaxed.
So what do you tend to look at first before someone even starts a movement? Even if it's not movement specific.
Hmm. The thing I before is really, how you approach the setup. Are you focused before you even like go in? Are you kind of just like walking over, getting yourself set up, and then like getting ready? And that focus and the setup really tells me a lot about how you're going to approach this exercise, and what I may need to do to make sure that it's good for you.
Yeah. So do you feel like in that you're kind of assessing as well, kind of, again, not just their physical setup, but you mentioned their focus. So is it their mindset, kind of their overall vibe, their energy, kind of the state that they come into you that day?
100%. Yeah. If you're coming in, a little bit distracted, maybe a little bit negative about a situation, like as soon as you get into this movement, the second something isn't perfect, you're going to stick to that. And you're like, oh, nope, like I feel this weird. I'm like, and that's, and you kind of get hung up on that. And it's, you get snagged on something that's minor when, something that you could really push through if you were a little bit more focused and in tune with yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I've felt that personally before. I'm sure we all have,
Yeah. Yeah.
Your mind is just elsewhere, but you need the mind-body connection for, we'll say, real
Exactly.
purposeful results.
No, that can be
Uh,
difficult.
and then what would you like to be in place personally before you increase load, speed, or intensity for anybody?
Really, I want people to be confident in the movement and confident in themselves and how they feel. Like I like to look at, I ask them, where do we feel this? Do you feel strong in the movement? Does it feel good? Okay, Like, are we actually challenging the muscles, or do you feel like your supports are giving? You feel strong, you feel good support, the muscles getting challenged. Cool. Now we can start to kind of progress it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And that reminds me of something that used to come up constantly with clients, actually, that still does. But sometimes when having people do an exercise, for example, I would say, let me know if you have, pain with this, if you have any
Hmm.
pain. And as soon as they start doing the exercise, they would say, I have some pain, right? And so you'd
Yeah.
say, well, where's your pain? And they'd be
Well,
like,
okay, where's that?
yeah, it's in my
Yeah.
butt. And then I'd be like, what does it feel like? And they'd be
Yep.
like, it's
Yep.
burning, And I'm like, that's your muscle
I'm like,
working,
congrats,
right?
it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's again, just discernment and just education around kind of what is what and what's a good sensation, what's not a good sensation, what you should be feeling in order to actually progress in a safe and purposeful manner versus a potential injurious one.
Oh, exactly. No, that's no saying that is it just, yeah, reminds me of all these different things. People, don't really know what they're feeling. They're like, oh, like, I feel it over here in my shoulder. And I'm like, well, why? Like, what do you don't feel it? And you shouldn't be feeling it in your shoulder. Like, don't just move through the motion because you think it looks normal. Like, let's take a step back. And then, let's try to feel it here instead. And they're like, oh, wow, like, this is way different. They're like, and usually right after that, there comes the statement, like, I'm so weak. I'm like, no, you're not weak. You haven't figured out how to like coordinate this movement with engaging this muscle. Like, the muscle's going to pick up and you're much stronger than you think you are. You haven't tried to move like that yet because
Yeah.
you don't know.
Well, and it's I think it's kind of genius working out or training with somebody who is also a physical therapist because you kind of do know those cues on how to
Mhm.
push and target not only the things that they want to strengthen superficially, right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
you know how to target their weaknesses and you know how to find them before they've even recognized that they're there,
Exactly.
right? So there's really a lot of benefit.
Yeah. It
Um,
gives you such a nice base to fall back on, right? People just think of it as, some resistance band movements and some table massages, but it
oh,
can be so much more than that.
Oh gosh, yes.
I
I
know.
know the
Yeah.
amount of people who thought everything I do is basically TheraBands or massage.
Yeah,
Pretty funny.
it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's very enlightening. It's really fun every time they're like, "Oh, this is way different." I'm like, "Yeah, like we're picking up some weights today. Like you're gonna break some rules and like you're gonna bend your back. It's gonna be okay."
Yeah, I used to have friends when we would travel or see each other ask if I could give them a quick massage, for
Yep.
example.
Yeah.
One grip and they'd be like, get off, it
Yeah. I'm like,
hurts. It's like, it's not what we do
it's not what you
necessarily.
need. Yeah, it's not what's
Yeah,
going
it's not
on.
what we
Yeah.
do. So, what are some of the most common compensation patterns that you feel like you tend to see these days?
I think some of the most common things I've been seeing lately are really it's really kind of funny. It's really just a lot of like lower chain things, right? I think a lot of hip, back, knee, ankle is all just so tied together, and people are starting to notice more issues. And I think that's coming about because more people are running and trying to get into more dynamic movements, and people aren't really prepared for a lot of those single leg movements. And so you start seeing like little injuries come about, and then next thing you know, people are like, "Oh, my knee hurts." I'm like, "Well, it's it's a little bit more." Than they're like, "Oh, my hip's sore, my back's sore." I'm like, "Well, everything's gonna start cleaning up. We're gonna make little adjustments, and the next thing you know, like they're gonna be like, oh, well, like what if we're just working on my knee?" I'm like, no, it's actually like your back's gonna start feeling better, your hip's gonna feel strong again, your ankle's not gonna feel weak. I'm like, it's all gonna start to tie together. So I've been seeing a lot of kind of single leg issues and instabilities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I see a lot of that too. In terms of, I just worked on somebody recently who had a very chronic old foot surgery from an
Oh
injury,
yes, uh-huh.
but they've never had it worked on or assessed since.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
can
they
be
have
tough.
issues up their entire side,
The
right?
entire
So
side.
it's
Yep.
kind of described. So for education purposes here,
Yeah.
if your foot and ankles do not have the appropriate mobility that they should, every time you take a step on the ground
Yep.
reaction force gets translated up your
All the
body,
way
up
up.
your
Yep.
kinetic chain.
It's got to
So
go
then,
somewhere.
yeah, so if there's not enough mobility in the foot and ankle, it's going to go to the knee next. If you don't have the muscular control to control that extra mobility, you might get an
Yep.
injury or it's going to keep on
It's gonna
traveling
keep
up.
traveling up.
So it really is a snowball effect.
Yeah, I tell people, your body's really amazing at compensating. It's really good at compensating. It knows you're like, okay, we got to keep moving. We got to get this done. All right, we're going to get it done. And so you don't notice it, right? It's a lot of the repetitive motion. So, your body's like, all right, cool. My ankle doesn't want to go, this much, but, I can get a little bit more if I twist my knee in this way or if I turn my hip out. So like, we're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep going. And the next thing you know, 3 months later, you're like, oh, this never got better. I'm like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
now we've got an issue.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I feel like another big one that I see a lot, and this is probably related to just tech in general, we'll say, using tech devices, whether it be for work or personal use.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, we know rounding forward of the shoulders, everybody knows this is not good for your posture, right? But realistically, it's like everybody has such significant upper trap tightness, but I have so many people, even women coming to me prior to their wedding that want to fix their posture, right?
Yeah.
And I constantly am explaining that, it's a whole balance. And this essentially is the only thing that can start to fire when your posture is like this, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can get this massaged all day long, but it's never going to go away until you actually address what is keeping you pulled forward, right?
100%. 100%. Yeah. I think a lot of those, I notice a ton of those like upper trap, rounded shoulder issues. And a lot of it I feel comes from, a lot of that posture we get. People will say, phones and all this posture won't affect your neck pain. And I can promise you, when I switched from being like mainly like standing and doing my job to being on a computer, my neck was on fire. I was like, this is not cool. This is not cool. And a lot of it is weaknesses, and because these muscles aren't trained for this and don't have that endurance. And so I try to teach people a little bit more about, when was the last time you reached overhead with any form of weight? Like, you grabbed a cup out of the shelf. That was about it. And then so people try to start going to the gym and throwing big weights over their head and doing all this stuff. I'm like, the last time you moved overhead was when you picked up a cup. Like, you have no idea how to actually get your body to take your arm up there.
Yeah.
And so you start getting all these crazy compensations, and then the muscles start paying the price later.
Yeah, they really do. And, same thing, went from standing all the time to doing more stuff on my computer. And I feel like my body felt like it aged like 10 years,
oh my
right?
Gosh, yeah.
In terms of stiffness, in terms
so
of just
stiff.
feeling like ready to go.
Yes.
So luckily I was able to pay attention, and I know what to do to kind of get myself out of that.
And now you're like, okay, let me get myself moving.
But then again, I went to a yoga class and we did like an upward facing cobra. And I realized, when was the last time I bent backwards?
When was the last time? Yeah, I was like, wow, yeah.
Yeah, but again, I know these things, but you still kind of get in the moment of things.
And you get stuck in your patterns, and that's why, you need that someone to come break that pattern sometimes. You need to get outside of the movement. And I encourage people, I'm like, get weird with your movements. Sometimes it's okay to have like an ugly looking exercise. Like, you have to teach your body how to move like that. Like, not everything's always going to be perfect in life, and you got to make sure your body's ready for the not perfect moment.
Exactly. Then this is part of why I started taking tennis last December.
Exactly.
It's like, I just want something that keeps my body adaptable.
100%.
And I know you know this because you played tennis too, but there are some shots where I'm like, I don't even know what my body just did.
How do I even get there? Yep.
But I'm like, glad I did it. Glad it got there.
Exactly. No, I started getting into like trying to do, this is ridiculous. Everyone who knows me would be like, yeah, that sounds like something you would do. Like, I started recently getting into like more like gymnastics movements. I'm trying to do handstands and cartwheels. And I'm like,
that's good.
Can I stand on my hands? Can I put pressure this way? Can I do a backflip? Can I do stuff like this? So I'm like, why not? Why not? Why not roll around and tumble around? Like, I think it's important to be able to challenge your body in different ways, because you never know what you need to do.
Well, it is. And we are never truly strong unless we're strong on either end of the spectrum, whether that be our eccentric strength versus our concentric strength, our lengthening versus shortening phases for listeners. Or similarly, it's just adaptability, right? And yoga has been helpful for some of those things. I would recommend definitely trying that out.
Oh, 100%. I think yoga would be crazy it's really good to help you adapt and figure out those stable moments. And then tennis makes you be really adaptable, because you're going left, you're going right, and you have so short of a time to respond and decide where your body needs to go. And so that can really start to add different challenges, and you can start to apply those principles in different moments in your life, and it starts to get really fun.
Yeah, and anything you can do to really challenge your body in different planes of motion, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
I've worked
different.
with so many endurance athletes over the years, and let's say pure runners, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And then you have them get on the floor to do an exercise and have them stand up, and their legs are like Bambi, right? Because
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
no
They're like,
lateral
I don't know
stability
where to
or
go. Yeah.
rotational control. Everything they do is in this plane of motion, right? So
Exactly.
they're
Just
just
forward.
primed for injuries and issues later,
Yeah.
right? And hence that's why they were seeing me in the first place, right? But
Exactly.
just keep yourself adaptable. Pick things like, a yoga or a workout where it does parse out side to side. That way you have
Yeah.
to get into each. You can't
Get
really
moving.
work
Yes.
with the
Spin
compensations as
around,
easily.
go
Yeah,
sideways, go backwards, challenge yourself.
exactly.
That's one of like the biggest things. One of my favorite like little. I'm always trying to be quick with warm ups. I try to get people moving. Like my favorite little warm ups I have people do is I'll have people walk on a treadmill for about 5 minutes, fair pace. First 2 minutes are normal. You're going forward. Then we spin. We're backwards. Then we're
Oh, good.
sideways for a minute, and then we're sideways for another minute. Hitting each side going all four directions, and people will freak out. They're like holding on to everything, turning it down to like 1 mile an hour. They're like trying to walk sideways. They're like terrified. I'm like, you can't even walk
It's
sideways on a
bizarre.
treadmill, and that's just because they have the ability to do these movements. They don't challenge their body enough that way, and so it gets really uncomfortable, and you get really stiff, and then you start getting protective, and then injury is going to happen when you start getting protective.
Yes, that. It's not just a physical thing. It almost becomes like a new identity and like how you
Yeah,
physically hold yourself too,
your body
right?
suddenly is like, I don't know how to move, and then you're like, no, you do know how to move. You like trust
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So then I actually work on feng shui with people in terms of bringing in some
Yeah.
of the ergonomics in their home too,
Hmm.
because whenever people do go through injuries or whatnot, again, it's not just the physical, their identity and how they
Oh
guard
yeah.
around it and what they choose to do or not do changes, right? So, how do you know what you're doing in training actually carries through to their lifestyle and transfers outside of the gym?
I love to always check in with people, and like, okay, cool. Our exercises are feeling better. But I like to hear, I'm like, okay, well, like, how's your sleeping going? Like, what's your day to day looking like? Like, and I like to follow my patients and clients on social media. So when like they do things I'm like, oh, like, how is it running outside? Or how is that trip over there? And they're like, oh, it felt great. Like I was doing good. And like the other day, like one of my patients was like, yeah, I reached over to grab something out of from the passenger seat and my back didn't hurt. And I was like, wow, this is working. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's little moments like that I'm trying to improve. Like, sure, I love when people can squat more weights and their back feels great, but like, can you sit on the couch at the end of the day and not like, be rubbing your neck or playing with your knee because it's sore? That's a win for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's a lot of communication and just kind of getting them to notice the actual things that were bothersome and that have
Exactly.
kind of cleared up in a way, right?
Little
And
moments
then
of your life that you get back.
yeah, exactly. And then obviously we talked about, our transition to sitting, a more
Hmm.
stagnant role, we'll
Yes.
say, or
Yep.
phase.
Little bit more
Uh,
sitting.
yeah, and how the effects of our work, our home setup can affect our training, our health, etc., and vice versa, the relatability. But then how do you account for training on top of actual work stress, poor sleep, or
Yes.
lifestyle load?
I think that is really the main factor on how your training should be designed. It should be designed around your lifestyle, your workload, and your stress. I tell people all the time, you can come up with the most beautiful, brilliant workout plan of all time. But if you don't do it, it's worthless. It'll do nothing for you. So I tell people like, look, if you got 2, 3 days and you can really do good work in those 3 days, I promise you, if we can add some structure and some planning in these 3 days, you'll be in so much better shape. You'll feel much better in all of your movements, and you'll have confidence and less worry, way more than you would if you're trying to scramble and do 20-minute workouts here and try to work out every day because you think that's what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's about integrating it in almost as like a more natural part of your ritual. right?
Yeah, exactly. Blend
Otherwise,
it
you're
into your
kind of just
life.
adding more stress to your day, ultimately.
Exactly. You never want it to become something you feel like you have to do. Like it's something
Yeah.
you're like, and once it becomes a chore, chores aren't fun and you're not going to put that effort into the chore because, like we talked about earlier, sometimes you're just doing the exercise instead of actually, challenging yourself and trying to make it better.
Yeah. Well, and, to use a very tangible example, I mean, I even do this with skincare based stuff, which I recommend
Yes.
to people because, you know, skincare is something you have to apply regularly in order
Yep.
for it to work.
Hmm.
But if you don't, there's no
If you
point,
don't,
right?
there's
You're
no
just
point.
wasting
Yeah.
money. But so just change up your products
Just
periodically. So,
change it up.
same
Yeah.
thing, change up your
Yeah.
routine
Change it
periodically,
up.
make it
Make
more
it
visibly or
fresh. Yeah.
actually interesting for yourself so that you want to do it. And
Exactly. Yeah.
also, why would you continue on with something in a manner that is boring or uninteresting to you if you can just
Exactly.
make such a small pivot?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a crazy change. I tell people, they're like, oh, what should I do for this? I'm like, well, what's fun? What do you like to do? I think that's
Yeah.
one of the questions that shock people when I'm like, creating programs and stuff. Like, well, what do you like to do in the gym? They're like, well, like, you're the expert. I'm like, yeah, but what do you like to do? I'm not going to make you do a bunch of stuff you hate because you're never going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and since we are the experts, we can pretty much take any mundane activity or task and
And
turn
I'll
it
make
into
it,
a
yeah,
workout,
turn it into what you
right?
like. Yeah.
Or
Like, do you like to
something
do
that's
this? Like to
beneficial.
do that? Like, are these exercises fun? Oh, you
Yeah.
hate this? Okay, cool. We got it.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. And then how do you know or how do you differentiate between somebody who's plateauing versus somebody who is overloaded? Because to them, it might feel
Mm.
relatively similar.
Yeah. I think kind of circling back to lifestyle, I immediately go into, okay, what was our week like? How was work? Are we eating well? Are we sleeping? Okay, did you add anything extra in? Did anything feel different? And then sometimes, the layers will start to come off. Like, oh yeah, I had like a really busy weekend and like I was at work for a while. Like I didn't sleep great. I pushed through that workout. It didn't feel super awesome, but like I still pushed through because I knew I had to do it. And and that's where I kind of like start to stop everything. I'm like, all right, let's dial it back a little bit. We're overworking a little bit. And then, when it comes to that plateau, I'm just like, okay, we're getting our training in, the movements are looking good, you feel good with everything. Now it's time to change up a little bit. Let's reevaluate, let's reassess, let's figure out how can we challenge you again.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good. And then do you notice a difference between men versus women and how they tolerate, let's say, load or recover? And how does that change your programming if it does?
I think it depends kind of on the person, on in the personality of the person. Um, you know, I think a lot of women are really they tend to they're really smart with their recovery, but they're also really strong with their movements. And so they'll try to push through a lot of things. And, then they're like, all right, I'm exhausted. I'm like, well, you did really awesome. Like, just relax a little bit. But then they will take their time with recovery. Whereas guys, they'll tend to push through things and then they'll start to skip out on the recovery a little bit more. They'll continue to kind of hammer away on things until they're like, all right, this is really bad. I'm like, yeah, like we should have stopped hammering like an hour ago, but you kept going.
I've noticed that too, and not even just in training, but in terms of like clients, if they're coming in with pain, even it's like
Yeah,
men tend to wait until they
it's bad.
absolutely can't
Yeah,
stand
it's
it
terrible.
anymore,
They're like,
or it's literally removed them from their regular day to
yeah,
day,
they're
right?
like, yep, we're done. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are
Whereas
you doing? Like,
women, tend to, and not all women, but women tend to, peel away a little bit more, or, you know, they tend to look inward and realize sometimes,
they're
like,
like,
hey,
oh,
I need
okay,
to
like
pause.
I think I can address this sometimes. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
sometimes, on the other end of that though, it's I have to like kind of guide them to be like, it's okay to have a little bit of discomfort through this. Like you're gonna make it. It's gonna be okay. Like
Hmm.
we're gonna keep pushing. We're gonna stick to the plan, and it's gonna start to get better. Like just like so we have to don't worry too much about it's not always gonna feel great. We're gonna have our ups and downs. Like we're gonna stick to it, and we're gonna get stronger, and it's gonna be better.
Yeah. And where do you think mind over matter in this whole topic can be helpful versus harmful.
Yeah, that was what I say. It can definitely be a mix of both,
Yeah.
and so it kind of comes a little bit to that pain, because pain, I tell people, pain is just very much like it is a mental thing. It is in your brain. It's a signal in your body. Yes, right. It's telling you there could be something wrong, but lots of times we don't. We get controlled by that signal, and I try to tell people, you know, we're going to push through a little bit. We're going to try to have tolerable pain, and then we're going to slowly build up exposure. Whereas sometimes, people are like, no pain, no gain, and they go hard and they're ripping through exercises, and I'm like,
Yeah.
stop, please don't do that. They're like, I thought it had to hurt. I'm like, no, 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 it doesn't have to hurt. And sometimes it's a little bit of an older generation, but they're like, yeah, like if it hurts, it's good. I'm like, no, God, no, it does. It's not good. This is not okay. Like, we gotta dial it back here. We can do things, and a little discomfort is good, but pain is not good. So we have to differentiate between, what's discomfort we can push through and what's pain we need to better understand.
Exactly. And also learning to understand your own anatomy and your own things that might get a little out of sorts here and there, right?
Exactly.
And because
Yes.
not all pain is bad, right?
No.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just a mere warning of like, hey, you're starting to overuse this area again. But if
Exactly.
you know what to do to, backtrack that compensation pattern, let's say, I don't know, even using a foam roller or a lacrosse ball, then
Yeah.
cool. You don't have to be
Cool.
scared of that pain, right? And you
Exactly.
can keep
Yeah.
on moving with your routine, with
Yeah,
your
we'll just
day.
bring it down
Yeah.
a little bit, and you can keep going. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Knowing your anatomy, and that education portion is something I'm huge on. I try to
Yeah.
teach people. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, throughout the day, you can do these little movements. You can try these little exercises, or you can do these little massages. Foam rolling, lacrosse ball. Start bringing your pain down and keep going through your day. They're like, oh, like I can just do this all day. I'm like, yeah, you can do this here, do it there, and then next thing you know, you have less pain throughout the day, and you're starting to have less stress. You have better function, and things start to just look brighter in your life.
Yeah, exactly. And then how do you see the pain start affecting their behavior?
Ooh, yeah. Pain can really affect, your overall emotion. It starts to, you can get angry. Like, you get upset. It starts off, you're good in the morning. You're like, all right, I have a little discomfort. But by the end of the day, when all that stress starts piling on, and, your neck is aching, your knees not feeling great, your back's kind of tweaked, and you're just like, that's all you're thinking about. And you're just getting that negative signaling into your brain. And then you start getting upset. You start to notice that in everything you do, in your relationships, and the way you interact with people, and the way you interact with yourself.
Yeah. And similarly, it's like we talked about pain avoidance, right? And some of the guarding around it. And realistically, let's take backs, for example. You tweak your back, right? First, it's like, ooh, I don't want to bend forward. That's a little scary, right? So that's the avoidant movement and the guarded movement. But then it becomes, picking this item up off the floor is difficult or challenging, or what if, right?
Exactly.
Or reaching
Yeah,
in
what
that
if
cabinet.
Yep.
Or what if I go to this dinner and sit in a chair? It might feel like crap
What
after,
if
right?
it's a bad chair? Like, I don't know. Like, what if we have to walk after? What if, like, where's it going to be?
Exactly.
Yep. And so you start to avoid activities you love.
Exactly. It becomes like an identity shift in terms of avoiding your lifestyle and what you're willing to participate in sometimes, right? Which can really zap your joy and your ability to recover further.
Taking away the things you love. And that's the last thing I want you to do is to give up the things you love because of something you feel in your body.
Yes. And similarly, I've noticed when people have been in a chronic pain state, we tend to set up our environment around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be to help support us, to modify, or to make things a little bit easier. But then sometimes when people are even structurally better in terms of physically you're good to go, a lot of times they go back home, they go to their environment, they sit on that same couch, they do the same patterns.
Exactly.
They're right back
to where they're at.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's sometimes you have to assess your patterns and your habits as well. But again, it's about learning the sensations of your own anatomy, your own body, and kind of rolling with those, right?
And exactly, yeah. If you don't know what you're feeling and how to perceive that, then you're going to continue to, usually think of things as negatives. You're like, oh, I need to adjust this position, or I need to do this, or I'll sit on this soft couch because I'm injured and I need a soft surface. And you start falling into these patterns when you don't because you don't know what's going on. So it's really important to learn and to grow in yourself.
Yeah. Well, and one of my favorite things that I tell clients is to unbias the bias, right?
Wow.
If you go home and you have a tendency to sit on one side of the couch and lean on that armrest, go to the other side.
Go to the other
right?
side. Yeah.
I don't care
sides.
if you still spend some time on that side, but spend as much time on the other side.
Yeah.
The same thing when you're standing. If you're standing and cooking and you shift weight to only one leg, that is a bias.
It's a huge bias. Yeah.
You're causing a misalignment, essentially.
Notice it. Yeah.
It's not being said to make people paranoid about everything that they're doing, but just to notice your own patterns and recognize where you can make a really small but really impactful difference for yourself in terms of how you actually feel.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Huge difference in how you feel. I think, recognizing those patterns is huge, because then people start to realize like, oh, like I am shifted over this way, or I always do move this way. And then when they start coming in and they're like, oh, this is the side that bothers me. And these things start to click and the dots start to connect. And then I'm like, yes, there we go. We're making progress.
And this is actually perfect because it kind of leads me into my next question, which I was going to ask on what position or activity do you think people spend the most time in that ends up mattering more than their workouts? Which I still want to ask that. But,
I think, it's one of two things. I think, how people position themselves, and these are the two biggest times we spend, in a singular position, how you position yourself at work. Do you sit in a desk? Do you stand and move around? Are you standing in one spot? Where's your computer screen? Where's your keyboard? So how you position yourself at work, and then how you position yourself at sleep, right? Those are the bulk of our day, 16 hours essentially. And, you're going to be stuck there. So how we set up in these positions is going to make a huge impact on your body.
Yes. Well, and I had a former client who I used to ask him constantly, like, how often are you sitting each day? And he was like, I never sit. I'm always on the go. I never sit. And I was like, I have a feeling you're sitting more than you think, which is fine,
so,
but I just need to figure out what's going on with this pattern. So I had him actually, like in his notes app or something, basically track for a couple of days. Anytime he sat down, he would just mark the time that he sat down, time he got up. And basically, long story short, he ended up figuring out that he was sitting for over 8 hours a day.
Wow. Yep. Exactly.
With all that time added up and not even realizing it.
And not even realizing it.
Yeah. So it's our subconscious patterns. But then also with work, it's not just sitting, right? There's so many people that ask me, well, I'll just get a standing desk, right? You can still stand with really bad posture.
Yeah.
And
like
for
that
example,
is not the solution.
Yeah. And I'm somebody that's hypermobile and I have flat feet. So prolonged standing for me is very uncomfortable.
It's not going to be comfortable.
Unless I'm moving
we're moving around,
and actively
we're adjusting.
paying attention to my posture. So, and then sleep, as you mentioned, it's, my favorite example is, imagine if you kept your elbow bent for 7 hours straight.
Yeah.
As soon as you went to straighten your arm, you'd be like, oh, God, that feels awful.
Terrible. Yeah.
That's what we're doing to our body for
yeah.
long periods of time.
It's, I see people end up in the same position all the time and they're like, my back is killing me. And it's so comical. I'm like, I call this the late night doom scroll position. You're on your back, scrolling on your phone. You're like, okay. You turn over onto your side, like, I'm tired, I'm going to go to bed soon, still on your phone. You roll over to go put your phone on your nightstand, and now you're half twisted, your back is kind of on the pillow, your legs are the other direction, and you're asleep. Then you wake up and you're like, oh, I can't move my back.
Yeah, it's not great. Even worse, I've had a few stomach sleepers lately.
Oh, yeah. Those...
So, listeners, if you're a stomach sleeper, contact one of us. We'll talk to you about what to do.
Yeah, unless you're putting yourself like on a massage table, you have nice support under your spine, like good arm positioning, like you're not going to wake up comfortable.
Well, and a lot of times I talk to people about why they choose that position. And a lot of times they just say it ends up defaulting back to the comfort of the pressure on their abdomen, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then you can get a pillow, you can get something else,
brace it,
something to put pressure on your abdomen, because that can be comforting,
Get a weighted blanket. Like there's options out here.
Yes, exactly. And then where do you see mental state affecting recovery?
Oh, that's a huge effect on recovery. going back to like that positive mindset, and like if you're in a good mindset and you're excited about where you're at, you can start to move on from little aches and little pains and little things that you tend to stick on when you're a little bit more negative, or you're a little bit more sad or having a rough day. You start to look at the negatives, look at the things that aren't doing great. And
Hmm.
recovery is, as much as it is physical, it's something that you have to, reteach yourself that it's okay to move again. It's okay to do this. It's okay to do that. And if you're constantly looking at the tiny, little discomforts that come with some of these things, you're going to linger on them. And so, positive mindset is a huge impact on recovery. If you can start to look past those things, and then next thing you know, little by little, the more you continue to kind of look past and think, okay, no, I'm doing great with this, doing great with that. Those things don't even bother you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And also, we also understand being in this industry that, as we mentioned before, being in pain, it can shift your personality, right? So
Yeah.
we understand the state that people are coming in. We're willing to be patient and listen and work with people. So, on the flip side, we just ask that people are willing to be patient with themselves
Be
as
patient
well,
with
because
yourself. Exactly.
recovery takes time, and
Takes
it's
time.
never a straight upward trajectory. It's
No.
a bit of a,
It's got its ups and downs. People
yeah,
are like, I'm like, how long have you been doing this? Like, I've been doing this for years. I'm like, all right, cool. We've been doing this for 3 months. Like, it's gonna take a little bit longer. Like, you suffered for years. Like, we're gonna get you better, and you're tracking up, you're tracking, and you have your down days, and I get that. But we're tracking up still, and it's gonna get better. You just have to give it a little bit of time.
exactly. And, I don't know about your approach. I've always looked at and assessed and treated people with a whole body approach. So
Yeah.
even if somebody was coming into me with a knee problem, as we would get that knee problem better, they would be like, oh, now I feel this foot thing that I had 20 years ago, or
Yep.
this
Yep.
back thing. And you're actually unwinding the process, right? It's
Yep. You're
decades
unwinding
of
it
compensation
so
patterns.
much,
So
so
again,
much.
it's something to be patient through, but again, at the end of it, people usually end up saying that they feel younger, more agile, they feel better, lighter, etc., than they have in decades. And a lot of
Exactly.
times, unfortunately, the things that well, not maybe unfortunately, but fortunately, the things that they have been told by past providers, like you're never going to run again or you're never going to whatever, a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff is
It's
gone,
all gone. Yeah.
because it's
I
just
hate
about
that
getting your
stuff.
body mechanics working better.
Yeah, exactly. Get it to work for you, getting it work better, and those things become possible again. So many times people are like, "Oh, like I have a bad knee, or I got a bad back. I can't go run, or I can't do squats, or I can't go swimming, or do this or that." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"No, you can do that, and I will show you how to teach yourself how to do that, and then
exactly
open
that.
that world up for you again."
Yes, we all have a body. Any human who has a body, this is basically, consider it as important as your phone if you consider your phone so important. You have to
Yeah.
maintain your phone, you have to update the software,
Yep.
you have
Yep.
to know the ins and outs to do things safely and securely.
Maintenance.
Take the same accountability with your body,
For
right?
your body. Yeah,
Yeah.
I tell people this all the time. I'm like, look, go brush your teeth. Like, you wake up every morning, you brush your teeth. You brush your teeth before you go to bed. Like, you can't take like 5-10 minutes to do a little bit of maintenance for the only body you have that's going to carry you through everything you do in life. Like, take some care, take care of yourself.
Yeah. Well, and it really does stave off the big things.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's well worth it, essentially. And then lastly, what do people misunderstand most about when they need PT versus a trainer? Do you,
I think, this is really good. I think PT, you know, PT's often, just pigeonholed as injury rehab, or, things that are there for you when you go wrong. But
yeah.
but rehab is just, one of the more, it's just like the first step in your training. A lot of personal trainers are great, and I work with a lot of them, and I've used them before. And I think people often find themselves, only looking at personal trainers for trying to improve performance, when a lot of the times physical therapists can improve performance greatly. I think if you're someone who, you have a good education on how to take care of yourself, like you've worked with therapists before, you have a little bit more idea on what you need, then go to that trainer to really improve that performance. But if you need more guidance, or, you've had some injuries in the past, like I think a physical therapist can guide you much better, because we can avoid pitfalls and avoid kind of getting you stuck in a spot where, we're not going to be able to train more, or, you're at a higher risk for an injury. And then next thing you know, you're like, I was working with the trainer for a little bit, but, my knee was kind of bothering me and we're doing these movements. And now, I have a major injury. And so no more working out, no more trainers. And so I think it takes a little bit of discernment of yourself,
Yeah.
If you start to
Well,
feel some discomforts, try to change it up.
yeah. Well, and also recognizing, like you said, like PT is kind of a multitude thing, right?
Yeah.
It is performance based. It is skill set based. It's not just the post-op rehab, right?
No,
And
exactly.
actually, most of my career, yes, I did work with post-op rehab, but it
Mhm.
was in an outpatient sports
Exactly.
medicine facility where we were working with a lot of pro athletes as well. So, and I did all of the hiring for all of our PT aides and trainers and stuff
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
And I hired people that have exercise science degrees, not
Mhm.
high schoolers,
Nope.
people that
No.
have
Yeah,
actual
exactly.
knowledge in anatomy, biology, all of the mechanics, because it's necessary, right? In
It's
order to
necessary.
actually level up and have things hold long term, you have to get the whole pie working together,
Yeah, I think
right?
you have to know what you're getting yourself into. Like, I mean, I was in the gym 2 days ago and I saw an ad on the TV and I was like, oh, like get your like trainer and like your personal trainer certification like on this weekend course. I'm like, cool. Like you can get a whole certification in a weekend, and the next thing you know, you're writing programs for people the next day. Like,
Yeah,
do you really trust that to build strength and improve the only body you have? Or do you want
yeah,
someone who has a little bit more knowledge and experience, and something that can
yeah,
guide you through when things go wrong? Because they're going to go wrong.
yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Source your people, right?
Yeah,
And, pay attention to what works for you and what doesn't, and make changes when necessary, right?
exactly, exactly. And I think there's nothing wrong with working with both, right? Have a personal trainer, have a physical therapist,
I
and then
actually love
have
collaborating
them,
with people's
yeah,
personal
and
trainers.
then
That is
blend. I
my
love
favorite
it. Yeah,
thing.
like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
Like, what's on their program for the week? Okay, cool. We'll do this.
yeah.
We'll add this warm up in. We'll do this, and I love doing that.
Right. And also, I don't have a training facility as you do, but I do love going to workouts with my clients too. They're
Hmm.
typical workouts. I'll even do it
Yeah,
with them and I'll watch them and
exactly.
I'll be like, this is where this went wrong. This is where we
Yep,
need to work on here. Right. Because
exactly.
now I know what they're doing in their real life
Hmm.
and I
When
can
I'm not,
actually
yeah, when
adapt
you're
it.
not
Right. Versus
there
just
guiding them
guessing.
every step. Yep, you're like, okay, I see
Yeah.
what you're doing over there. Okay, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's always a collaborative thing. Just like trainers,
Yeah.
PTs, there can be a lot of not so great ones out there too,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
it's
Oh,
have
yes.
discernment, um, and just pay attention to kind of what you need and the intention behind it, and make sure that whatever you choose is actually fitting what you need, right?
No, 100%. Yeah, you are right on that. Yeah, I don't want anyone to think that like I'm just isolating personal trainers. There are some
Oh, of course not.
terrible, terrible therapists. Oh,
Oh,
awful
yes,
therapists that are
yes.
doing terrible harm to people in this community and the
Oh no.
practice itself. But,
Yeah,
discernment is good for everybody.
it is. It's just knowledge is power,
No, yep,
Seriously.
exactly. It really
Well,
is.
well, huge thank you to Dr. Brandon for
Thank
chatting
you.
with
Thank
me
you so much, Dr.
today. And
Summer.
please let everyone know where they can find you. He's based out of Tampa, but please let
Yes.
everybody know your information specifically.
Of course, yeah. So we're based out of Tampa. Right now, you can find us at the Alpha Omega Gym in West Tampa area, and then you can follow us on Instagram at drbrandon.boundless and contact me there, and I'll get right to you, and we'll get you feeling and moving at your best.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice
Thank you so
talking with
much. It
you.
was perfect.
And
It was a pleasure.
yes,
A lot of this comes down to understanding what your body is actually doing, not just doing more and hoping it works. If something in today's conversation gave you clarity or direction, take what resonates and apply what works. Knowledge is power, and now you have more of it. Until next time.